heart of Rome, a young Julius Caesar began his climb to power, charming allies and intimidating enemies with unmatched ambition. Born into a prominent patrician family, Caesar navigated political intrigue from childhood, learning both diplomacy and the ruthless tactics of Roman elites. Even early in his career, Caesar's charisma attracted supporters, while rivals quietly plotted against him. Fearing the rise of a man destined for greatness, he fought not only battles abroad but political wars at home, understanding that influence in Rome's Senate was as lethal as the sword. Caesar's victories in Gaul expanded Rome's empire and his reputation, but they also fueled jealousy, fear, and conspiracies among Rome's powerful elite. Every victory brought him closer to unparalleled power, yet each step forward created more enemies, secretly plotting to halt his unstoppable rise. Caesar's daring nature was matched by cunning. He knew when to charm allies and when to strike against political opponents. His journey was marked by both brilliance and audacity, making him adored 7D by the people yet feared by the Senate's most influential figures. Caesar understood power was a delicate balance, blending military genius with political maneuvering, carefully orchestrating his path to dominance. Even as rumors of ambition spread, the common people adored him, celebrating triumphs that would later ignite envy and fear among his rivals. Caesar's charisma was undeniable. Soldiers followed him loyally, while enemies plotted in shadows, fearing the inevitable consolidation of power. Despite growing threats, he pressed forward, conquering lands, extending Rome's influence, while carefully cultivating loyalty among citizens and troops. Every decision carried immense weight. The Republic's fragile balance teetered between admiration for his genius and fear of absolute rule. Even allies could not ignore the whispers. Rumors of ambition, betrayal, and the shadow of assassination haunted the corridors of power. Caesar's calculated charm masked a strategic mind, capable of predicting rival moves while consolidating loyalty among Rome's populace. Ambition and brilliance made him both loved and feared, setting the stage for political tension that would soon explode into history. Even victories came at a cost. Rivalry, jealousy, and the ever-present threat of betrayal followed Caesar wherever he went. He navigated these dangers with precision, aware that each ally and enemy held the power to alter Rome's fate forever. By mastering both battlefield and Senate, Caesar positioned himself as Rome's unrivaled leader, but danger always lurked just behind the throne. Even as Caesar rose, unseen plots thickened. Whispers of betrayal, assassination, and a fate no mortal could foresee, hanging over Rome like a shadow. Rome teetered on the edge of chaos, where senators whispered dark plots, fearful of Julius Caesar's ever-growing power and influence over the Republic. Every law Caesar proposed caused tension. Each reform angered powerful families who saw their influence slipping with each vote he commanded. Fear spread like wildfire. Allies became cautious, rivals grew bold, and Rome's streets hummed with rumors of rebellion and hidden alliances. Even Caesar's closest supporters could not ignore the growing tension. The Senate's fear of dictatorship festered like an unhealed wound. Political factions clashed over loyalty and power, each decision a gamble that could either preserve the Republic or hasten its collapse. Rumors of assassinations swirled quietly among elite circles, whispered in corridors where shadows lengthened and trust was scarce. Caesar's every move was scrutinized, analyzed, and feared, as even minor decisions became potential sparks for political rebellion. The tension extended beyond the Senate. The streets were alive with gossip, betrayal, and whispered predictions of civil war. Even allies like Mark Antony and Octavian watched cautiously, balancing loyalty with their own ambition, unsure who might rise or fall next. In Rome, fear was contagious. Even the strongest men hesitated, knowing betrayal could come from the most trusted allies at any moment. The Republic's fragile institutions creaked under pressure, every debate, vote, and speech threatening the balance of power. Factions formed alliances and rivalries in secret, plotting strategies that could either preserve the Republic or destroy it entirely. Caesar, aware of the growing unrest, maneuvered carefully, employing both charm and intimidation to secure loyalty from key figures. Each step Caesar took shifted the political landscape, forcing friends and foes alike to choose sides in a game with deadly stakes. Rumors of plots and schemes infiltrated every corner of Rome, instilling fear and uncertainty among even the most powerful men. Even victories abroad could not quell unrest at home. Senators feared that Caesar's return would signal the end of the Republic. Every law he passed, every ally he gained, increased both admiration and paranoia, fueling the simmering tension in Rome's elite circles. Rome's delicate balance between freedom and domination teetered, with each political move carrying consequences that could change history forever. As factions jockeyed for position, the city buzzed with fear, suspicion, and whispers that destiny itself had been rewritten. In this fragile political storm, Every decision could ignite conflict, and every ally could become a hidden threat, shaping Rome's turbulent future. In the shadows of Rome, a silent conspiracy was forming, one that would change history and end the life of the Republic's most powerful man. It began with fear. Fear that Julius Caesar was no longer a leader of Rome, but a man destined to become its absolute ruler. Among them stood men of influence, senators who once supported Caesar, now quietly questioning his growing dominance over Rome's fragile system. At the center of the conspiracy was Marcus Junius Brutus, a man torn between loyalty to Caesar and duty to the Republic. Cassius, ambitious and calculating, fueled the movement, convincing others that Caesar's death was the only path to preserve freedom. Secret meetings were held under the cover of darkness, where plans were whispered, alliances formed, and trust remained dangerously fragile. Each conspirator carried their own motives: fear, ambition, loyalty, or revenge, blending together into a deadly plan that could not be undone. But trust was never absolute. Even within the conspiracy, doubts lingered, and betrayal was always a possibility waiting to surface. The plan was simple, yet terrifying. Strike swiftly, strike together, and ensure Caesar would never rise again to claim absolute power. But here's where it gets unsettling. The conspirators knew once they acted, there would be no turning back, only chaos or control. They chose the Ides of March, the perfect moment when Caesar would be surrounded, vulnerable, and unaware of the fate awaiting him. Even as the day approached, Caesar remained unaware of the growing storm, trusting those who had already sealed his fate. Warnings came in subtle forms: letters, whispers, uneasy glances, but none were enough to change the course of what was coming. The conspirators refined their plan, rehearsing every movement, ensuring that hesitation would not sabotage their deadly mission. Each man knew his role, each action calculated, forming a deadly sequence that would unfold within seconds, yet echo for centuries. Despite the precision, uncertainty lingered, as even the most carefully planned actions could unravel in the chaos of the moment. The night before the Ides of March was heavy with tension, as Rome unknowingly stood on the brink of irreversible change. Some conspirators hesitated, questioning whether their actions would save the Republic or plunge it into deeper chaos. Yet the plan moved forward, driven by fear, ambition, and the belief that history would justify their actions. By dawn, the conspiracy was set, and within hours, Rome would witness one of the most shocking betrayals in history. March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, a day that began like any other, but would end in betrayal that shocked the entire Roman world. Caesar awoke to a restless city, unaware that within hours, the men he trusted most would surround him with deadly intent. Some accounts speak of warnings, uneasy feelings, strange dreams, but Caesar chose to proceed, confident in his power and control. Outside, Rome moved as usual. Citizens walked the streets, unaware that history was about to take a violent and irreversible turn. As Caesar made his way toward the Senate, conspirators quietly took their positions, blending in with the crowd and waiting. Each conspirator carried hidden intent, their faces calm, their minds focused on the moment that would define them forever. Inside the Senate chamber, everything appeared ordinary, but beneath the surface, tension coiled like a tightening trap. Caesar entered, greeted by familiar faces, men who had shared victories with him, and now prepared to end his life. The signal was subtle, a request for attention, a gesture that seemed harmless, but marked the beginning of the end. And then, everything changed in an instant. What happened next would shock even those who planned it. The first strike came unexpectedly, breaking the illusion of order and plunging the chamber into chaos. One by one, the conspirators joined, surrounding Caesar in a coordinated act of betrayal that left no chance for escape. The chamber erupted into confusion, senators shouting, some fleeing, others frozen in disbelief at what was unfolding. Caesar, caught in the storm, struggled to comprehend the betrayal, surrounded by men he once trusted. The attack was swift and relentless, unfolding in seconds yet leaving an impact that would echo through history forever. As the chaos subsided, silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the realization of what had just occurred. The conspirators stood still, their plan executed, yet uncertainty lingered. Had they saved Rome or doomed it? Outside, the city remained unaware, continuing its daily rhythm, as history had already been rewritten within the Senate walls. Within moments, news would spread, transforming confusion into fear, and fear into a storm that would engulf the entire Republic. The assassination was over, but its consequences were only beginning. Rome would never be the same again. Within minutes of the attack, the Senate chamber fell into stunned silence. But outside, a storm of fear was already beginning to rise. The conspirators stood uncertain, their plan complete, yet the weight of what they had done began to settle heavily upon them. Some fled immediately, fearing retaliation, while others remained frozen, unsure if they had saved Rome or doomed it forever. Outside, the first whispers spread quickly, confusion turning into fear as rumors raced through the streets of Rome. Within moments, panic began to build as citizens struggled to understand what had just occurred behind closed doors. Messengers ran through the city, carrying fragmented news that only deepened the confusion and fear gripping Rome. The truth began to emerge slowly, and when it did, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Shock turned to fear, and fear quickly transformed into anger as the people realized the gravity of what had just happened. The conspirators, once confident, now faced an uncertain reality. Rome was no longer under control, and chaos was spreading fast. But here's the turning point. The conspirators expected praise, but what they got instead would shake them to their core. Instead of celebration, the streets filled with uncertainty, as no one knew who would take control next. Allies of Caesar began to gather, quietly preparing for what could become a violent response to the assassination. Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest allies, moved carefully, aware that every decision now carried life or death consequences. The Senate's control was slipping rapidly, as fear replaced order, and uncertainty ruled every corner of the city. Citizens barricaded themselves indoors, unsure whether riots or military action would erupt before nightfall. Rome, once a symbol of power and order, now trembled under the weight of uncertainty and fear. The conspirators realized too late their act had not restored balance, but ignited a fire they could not control. The streets grew quieter as fear settled in. But beneath that silence, something far more dangerous was beginning to take shape. Rome was no longer stable. It was waiting, holding its breath before the next inevitable wave of conflict. The assassination was only the beginning. What followed would reshape Rome forever, in ways no one could have predicted. Long before the Ides of March, strange signs began to appear, warnings that something terrible was about to unfold in Rome. Many believed the gods themselves were sending messages, trying to warn Caesar and Rome of the danger ahead. Unusual events were reported across the city. Unnatural weather, restless animals, and an unsettling feeling that something was wrong. Even the skies seemed disturbed, with sudden flashes and strange patterns that left citizens uneasy and fearful. A soothsayer famously warned Caesar to beware the Ides of March, a message that would later echo through history. Despite the warning, Caesar dismissed it, viewing such predictions as superstition rather than a real threat to his power. Others close to him were not so certain. Some began to question whether these signs should be taken more seriously. On the night before the assassination, tension filled the air, as if Rome itself was holding its breath. Reports described strange occurrences, doors opening unexpectedly, shadows moving, and an overwhelming sense of unease. But the most chilling sign came from someone closest to Caesar, and it nearly changed everything. Calpurnia, Caesar's wife, experienced a disturbing dream that left her shaken and fearful for his safety. She urged him to stay home, convinced that something terrible would happen if he went to the Senate that day. For a brief moment, Caesar hesitated, the weight of the warnings pressing against his confidence. But ambition, pride, and pressure from others soon overcame doubt, pushing him toward the decision that sealed his fate. Outside, the city seemed normal, yet beneath the surface, tension continued to build with every passing moment. The warnings, though ignored, would later be remembered as chilling signs that something greater was at play. To some, these omens were coincidence. To others, they were undeniable proof that fate had already been decided. Even after the assassination, these events were revisited, analyzed, and feared as warnings that had gone unheeded. The story of these omens became part of Caesar's legend, adding mystery and depth to an already shocking event. Whether fate or coincidence, the warnings were real, and they remain one of the most haunting parts of Caesar's final days. They believed they had saved Rome, but within days the conspirators realized they had unleashed something far more dangerous than Caesar himself. Instead of praise, the streets filled with tension, and the people of Rome did not respond the way the conspirators had expected. The conspirators stepped forward, attempting to justify their actions, claiming they had acted for the good of the Republic. But their words failed to inspire confidence. Instead, they were met with uncertainty, fear, and growing anger. Meanwhile, Caesar's allies began to organize, quietly preparing to challenge the very men who had ended his life. Among them was Mark Antony, who carefully navigated the situation, waiting for the right moment to act. When Caesar's funeral was announced, tensions reached a breaking point as citizens gathered to hear what would be said. Mark Antony's speech would change everything, turning grief into fury and pushing Rome toward chaos. As his words echoed through the crowd, emotions shifted, transforming sorrow into anger directed at the conspirators. And then, the crowd erupted. What followed was something the conspirators never saw coming. Violence spread through the streets as anger boiled over, and Rome descended into unrest. The conspirators, once confident, were now hunted, forced to flee the very city they claimed to have saved. Brutus and Cassius regrouped, preparing for the conflict they now knew was unavoidable. The republic they tried to protect was now slipping further into chaos, as power struggles intensified across Rome. Battles would follow, alliances would shift, and the conspirators would face consequences far beyond what they imagined. Their decision had set in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped, pulling Rome into further conflict. Even as they fought, the conspirators realized their vision of restoring the republic was slipping away. One by one, their power diminished, replaced by the rise of new leaders ready to reshape Rome's future. The conspirators who once held control now faced defeat, exile, or death, as the consequences of their actions caught up with them. In the end, their plan did not save Rome. It changed it forever, and not in the way they had hoped. Julius Caesar was gone, but his influence did not die with him. In many ways, it had only just begun. The assassination that was meant to restore the Republic instead accelerated its collapse beyond recovery. In the power vacuum that followed, new leaders emerged, reshaping Rome into something entirely different. Among them was Octavian, later known as Augustus, who would rise to become Rome's first emperor. The Republic, once the heart of Roman identity, gradually faded, replaced by an empire built on power and control. Caesar's name itself became a symbol of authority, echoed through history and titles used by rulers for centuries. His story spread far beyond Rome, becoming one of the most studied and debated events in history. From books to plays, his assassination became a symbol of betrayal, ambition, and the fragile nature of power. Even today, the events of the Ides of March continue to captivate and disturb those who study them. But here's the deeper question. Was Caesar truly the villain they believed, or the victim of something much larger? Some view him as a tyrant, a man who threatened the Republic with absolute power. Others see him as a visionary, someone who could have transformed Rome into something stronger and more unified. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a complex figure caught in a moment of irreversible change. What remains certain is this: the decision to end his life reshaped the course of history forever. The Republic fell, the empire rose, and the world that followed carried the echoes of that single moment. Caesar's death was not just an ending. It was the beginning of a new era that would shape civilization itself. And yet, one question still lingers. Could history have been different if that day had unfolded another way? We may never know the answer, but the mystery continues to draw us back, searching for meaning in the past. Because some stories don't end, they echo through time, leaving behind questions that refuse to fade. Subscribe to Hidden Vault for more deep dives into history's most haunting mysteries.